Joe, a lot of people don't know that you have a background in epidemiology. So can you give us a quick, they might say, well, he owns the team, but you speak from a different perspective than most owners. So can you just give a little background on your education and how you view this?
Well, thank you for having me on. Who knew?
We knew
that a master's in epidemiology, public health and epidemiology, which I did after my undergraduate degrees, would somehow come to bear all these years later. But it has. So I have a master's in public health and infectious disease epidemiology, if you can believe it, from 1979 from UCLA. And it's actually been pretty useful. I mean, just having that background. And of course, I was in venture capital, so I had a lot of life science background, starting a lot of companies. Actually, vaccine companies, all kinds of companies related to the space, medical devices and so on. So all of that really turned out to be pretty valuable during this last 12 months as we thought about how we were going to deal with the situation.
Were you early to understanding that this was going to be a big problem for sports and entertainment? I know you set up a task force very early. Do you feel as if you were kind of on top of things early, that this was going to be a big problem?
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt from the moment it happened. You may not know this. I'm trying to remember now, it might have been 15 years ago, my firm, which was called Kleiner Perkins at the time, I was with them for 25 years, 30 years. We started a pandemic fund. We actually started a pandemic fund. We were before our time. The fund, did okay. We made some investments, made a little money, but it was really, the idea was that this was going to happen. Exactly what has happened was going to happen at some point. And I think it was a little too early, and probably not the right risk profile to do that fund at the time. But if you had started that fund a few years ago instead, it would have been huge, because look at all the companies and businesses that have been started and created in the interim. So we did, we knew this someday could be a problem, just like Bill Gates has been talking about it for years. These are viruses. I mean, this happens every 20, 30, 40, whatever number of years throughout history. I mean, this is what happens. You wipe out actually pretty large slugs of the population. 1918 pandemic, there was a coronavirus pandemic in 1890 or so. There were pandemics of, influenza, but there were others. So it's just something that probably was going and probably will again happen. Viruses are, they're perfect creatures. They reproduce quickly. They move quickly. We're not going to be able to stop them, really. We have technology, though, that can react to them better than we've ever had before now.
The question is then, do you believe that this will spur whether collective action by owners and leagues to be better prepared the next time? If it's a definite that it's going to happen again, can sports and entertainment be better prepared for it?
Well, we're going to have to be. The problem is it may not happen again for another 20 years, right? We don't really know. So, and no one knows why this one actually happened, right? There was speculation about it, the market and the Chinese government and so on. But I think we do need to be prepared to some extent for some of this. The good news is in all of this, the great news in all of this, from my perspective, I anticipated sort of the reaction. I started a task force. We did all the things we needed to figure out how we're going to get back, as fast as we can, testing and so on, the value of that. But the good news is science moved faster in terms of creating the vaccines than I think anyone thought was possible. In fact, the fastest, as you probably heard now, the fastest vaccine ever created and get to market was like 4 years for, I think it was mumps or measles, I forget, but in history. And this one was like 9 months. So we can all yell at Donald Trump, but that was pretty amazing response for how the academic institutions and actually even the government did move to spend money on developing these vaccines and get them through the FDA, which I've spent years doing. Let me tell you, it ain't easy to get through the FDA. The fact that we got through the FDA so fast is unbelievable. And the great news is it all has worked better than we all could have imagined. It was the best possible case. That's how well these vaccines work.
Are your players vaccinated, or is there any resistance, or are you trying to help them get vaccinated?
It's funny you bring that up. Because
here we are.
Yeah, we were talking about it. I was talking just before I got on this call with my head trainer and performance head, the guy head of performance. And I said to him, I know Adam has left it sort of at the will of the teams. New Orleans has vaccinated their players. I don't know that another team has. everyone's worried about the reaction out there, cancel culture and whatever. I mean, just people reacting to players getting it before someone else. And I certainly think that was appropriate. We want people who are most at risk and danger of older populations to get it first. I think we're getting to the point, though, where that has to flip a little bit. And if the players could get it, I would be in favor of them getting it. In fact, I want my entire organization vaccinated. I just think it's the right thing to do. We're in contact with the public. It's a safety thing.
Right. We are tight on this one, by the way, and I didn't have anything to do with this, but we talked to you at our last event, and I don't think there was a lot of optimism coming from you at our last event. You were talking about next year and perhaps beyond with masks and limited crowds. So the title here is How Far Have We Come? How far have we come, Joe?
For all of the criticisms of, whether it be the last administration or whether it be the rollout this spring, all the criticism, look, I think we're doing pretty damn well. It's pretty amazing how far we've come. Vaccine is getting rolled out. I don't know the numbers now, but it may be 12% of the adult population, even in California, which has been slow compared to other places. But it's happening. And, if you look at it a little bit bigger picture here, it's happening pretty fast. And, everyone who wants to get vaccinated, which I would hope is a large number and getting larger, should be able to get vaccinated here. They're saying, May, June, somewhere like that. And I think that's pretty amazing how fast that's all happened. And we've come a long way. Now I'm turning my attention. We all should be turning our attention to not just the playoffs, for the NBA, but maybe for the fall to see what's the environment going to be like this fall. Now, people will be vaccinated, but I think there are political climates that still will be say, oh, well, there's some people that aren't vaccinated, they're at risk or whatever, and I'm worried about that for the fall. And I just think we need to figure out politically how to get through that and how to set up our teams to be prepared in certain environments, perhaps California, where we are, to deal with that and to try to have a full arena.
So give me your revenue projections. Are they rosier than they were 2 months ago, let's say?
Well, not for this year. I mean, we've kind of written off this year. It's a terrible, terrible economic, everyone's had a lot of problems, but economic situation. We're going to lose over $200 million this year. There's nothing to do about that. Even if we get some fans back, which we're very close, we think we will start getting fans back. We hope by mid-April. That's our hope right now, and that's what we're being told by the state. I had a meeting on Monday night, but I don't want to say too much because it isn't a done deal, and they're still working through things. But outdoor venues have been approved for some fans, and I think indoor venues will be approved. And I think it'll be if you're willing to test those check for vaccination or to test. I'm hoping that we are able to get more fans than you don't. And we, of course, as you know, have had a proposal and have been prepared for months to test every single person that goes in the building. That's what we do today. And we would be prepared to test every fan that goes in the building too. I don't think other teams want to do that. I don't think they're prepared to do it. I don't think, whatever reason, we are, because we think it's important and we've been prepared for months.
Our friends at Craft Analytics have been taking sort of the temperature of fans for the past 8-9 months, and you see their optimism rising in the numbers. They're almost ready, little by little, that they're getting more confident about going back into buildings. What are you hearing from your fans? What is it that they would like to see to make them feel most comfortable about going back in the building at, let's say, 75% capacity, somebody sitting near you?
Well, I mean, we're taking surveys, and most people, I think it's more than 60% is the last I heard. More than 60% are very comfortable going back, period. Now, a lot of that may skew with, age, and things like that. Younger people, I don't know about you, but I've been traveling quite a bit to go scouting. And, I was in Florida, the G League Combine. I was in Las Vegas last week for the, some of the scouting, some of the tours. You hardly know there's a pandemic in some of these places. People are in indoor dining, and they're just, no one's even talking about it. I mean, it's amazing. California is a little different than that, but getting there. So I think young people in particular, they're kind of done with this, and we have to encourage them to be safe. Obviously, when everyone's vaccinated, it'll be safer. But the numbers are coming down, and people realize that, and the vaccines are going out, and the two things are crossing, and I think the pandemic's kind of coming to an end. is what's happening here. The numbers just simply, this is a numbers game with this virus. That's all it is. And the numbers are working in our favor now over the next several months. So I think people are, to your question, I think they're willing, and I think there are a lot of people really interested. If you look at restaurants that have opened up recently in some of these areas of California, even, there are people reservations like immediately book up for 10 days. So people just, they want to get out. They're tired of this, and we all are. And so, but we need to be safe. So I think fans will come back, especially if you're vaccinated. You should feel very safe. And for us, at least for us, I'm just going to say, at least initially, we're willing to test anyone who wants to come that isn't vaccinated. Now, again, I don't know that other teams will do that, but we will do that and can do that. And so we're hoping that makes people feel really safe. And the proof will be in the pudding. We'll see how many people sign up and buy tickets in the next, whenever we get fans.
Yeah, you're a pretty forward-thinking ownership group and executive group. What sorts of things that came to prominence because of the pandemic, and whether it's tech, whether it's data, what sorts of things will have legs for the Golden State Warriors?
Well, I think this has changed everything forever. I mean, I think I was listening a little bit earlier on, I forgot who said it, but that the arenas are going to be cashless maybe from now going forward. I mean, that's probably correct. There are certain things like that. Ventilation in buildings. We just happen to have a new building and the ventilation is spectacular. But even we have made some corrections in the last month or two to try to upgrade and make it even better. But I think a lot of buildings have to go through and do those kinds of things. And I think just the way we train people, the safety protocols, how we serve food. I mean, at least for a while, we're going to see people paying a lot of attention to these kinds of details in all sporting or entertainment environments, and particularly those indoor for obvious reasons. So I think you're going to see a lot of paying attention to those kinds of details.
Does it provide opportunities that perhaps you weren't looking at?
I do think that. As an investor, as a venture guy for a long time, I've always had the view that I hate, when terrible things happen, but usually when terrible things happen or, bad economic situation where it means there's opportunity, right? Something else has opened up as an opportunity. And so I think that's what's happened over the last year. I'm involved in a couple of companies on the outside, one in particular, a company called Invisalign. I've been on the board for 20 years. I started it. And our business is up 50% year over year in a pandemic. How can that be? You're working in someone's mouth. It doesn't seem to sort of sound right. But the truth is, we were going to a digitization in terms of everything we do, in terms of how we diagnose what the teeth look like today and how we're going to move them going forward. Everything was being done that way. And that whole trend towards digitization of how we operate in that environment and many others, it's been an opportunity for many businesses to move quickly and to create, new businesses or change the businesses they are in. The quicker you move and realize what the world is today, the more opportunity can be realized.
We'll get out with this. I'll let you go with this one. One, I think, by the way, you should bring back the pandemic fund. that might have some appeal nowadays. But how have you gone about just checking in on your employees? It's a big organization. Obviously, your players are front-facing. They face tons of pressure anyway. There's isolation. But how have you sort of put that message out to the troops about just making sure that everybody who works for you is okay?
Well, we have a great management team that really cares about our employees and our fans and the community. And we spend an enormous amount of time educating them. We have weekly, company-wide calls to update them on various things that we're doing. So we're all over that. We test every employee. We have been for a long time now, 3 times a week. You can't go more than a couple of days without being tested. And we've gotten a number of them to come back into the office as a result. You kind of need to be in the office for some people. And so we're taking that approach going forward with everything. We're trying to get people to understand what's going on, that we're trying to keep them as safe as possible, that it's absolutely paramount that we do that for our employees, for our fans, for the community. And so, I think that's what every company has to do in this environment, and many are.
Yeah, I like that one leads into the next. You're probably dealing with folks like Justin here, the sports practice director at Dimensional Innovations, and Jacob not long ago from Sportico wrote a piece on sort of the air filtration systems you were talking about and the expenses that go into it. I'm curious from the vendors, from your employees, what are some of those talks, Joe? We'll get you out on that one. What are you hearing from outside vendors? What are you hearing about how they can help with innovation?
Well, they're all doing it. They're all looking for guidance. 6 months ago, I will tell you, everyone I talked to, I was scared because they just weren't focused on it. Even big, really well-run companies didn't even have the slightest idea of testing or what I'm talking about, what we were talking about at the time.
You told us the health officials didn't really understand the rapid testing.
I'm not even sure they today really do. I mean, and I don't mean that to be critical. That's not really their job, right? This technology is not really their job. The job is to worry about the population, and the numbers in the population and bigger macro things. But no, they're not. I mean, I think in our most recent calls even with the state, we had a very good dialogue, and I think they were very cool about it, and that they said, hey, whatever you can educate us on, and we can work together on these things. We're trying to. I think that's a good dialogue. I wish we kind of had that dialogue 6 months ago, but it was hard for the state, cities, companies, even good companies, to nobody has an epidemiology officer in most companies, right? They just don't. And so I think now there are companies people are working with that have started up that know all these things. They're working with them. Companies like Everlywell. I could go through a whole bunch of you're all everyone's starting to figure all this out and understand. It's a little late, but not really, because we don't know how things are going to go for sure. We need to be prepared for whatever the future may bring and for next year. So I think it's a lot better than it was. There's a lot of dialogue with our vendors. They all understand. They've been reading. They're getting there, and we're working with them. And I think it's getting better.
All right, Joe, thanks so much. I do appreciate taking the time as always.
Yes, of course. Thank you.